My name is Taka Soto, and I'm from Rancho Cucamonga, California. So the passion for cars started when I was young. My grandma would take me to a little toy store across the street, and she'll always buy me like a little Hot Wheels. And I think the passion pretty much started from there. Starting this business, actually, it kind of accidentally happened. My friend Rick Ishitani, this is like maybe like 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. My buddy Rick Ishitani suddenly bought a Skyline. It was a Hakko Skyline, and it had a 2-liter engine, L-series engine, and it came with SU carburetors. And the car wasn't running too well, so Rick was like, "Hey, can you help me tune SU carburetors?" And I'm like, well, I don't really, I haven't really like planned on like tuning other people's carburetors or anything like that. But since he was a friend of mine, I kind of accepted to help tune the carburetors, and that's how it kind of started, this whole Kyusha House business. And he was very supportive. And after that, he was like, telling everybody like, "Oh yeah, Taka helped me tune the carburetors." And from there, word of mouth kind of spread, and more and more people started to show up at my house, and they're like, "Hey, like I heard about you. Can you help me tune carburetors?" And so it kind of snowballed from there. So yeah, it was definitely an accidental business that I kind of started, and all thanks to Rick, I was able to really find my passion for carburetors. So Kyusha House, Kyusha means classic car or vintage car in Japanese, and house because I started my business in my own house in a garage. So Kyusha House, that's where the name came from. The type of service I do, I mainly work on classic cars, Japanese classic cars. I do a little bit of everything from suspension work, engine stuff. But my main type of business that I do is carburetor restoration, installation, and tuning service. The logo that I have here at Kyusha House is my good friend, Datsmo. He's the one that created for me. Datsmo has been a supporter of Kyusha House from the day one. And I kind of talked to Datsmo about like, hey, I was really inspired by your business, because Datsmo has his own business as well. And when I first started to get into 240Zs, I would do some research, and his name would always pop up online. So I finally reached out to him, and ever since then we became really good friends. So when I told Datsmo that I was gonna start my own business, he was like, "Hey, let me make you a logo." He's a graphic artist, so he built a logo for me. And he kind of gave me a concept like, "What do you like?" And I'm like, "Well, I kind of like to have a little bit of Japanese name in it, with the Kyusha House, as well as like a little star or something." And he kind of took that idea and built me a logo concept. So yeah, it was Datsmo's job. So the first car I ever had was a 1987 Toyota Corolla A86. It was my mom's hand-me-down. This is back in the day when everybody was getting into Hondas, Honda Civics, Prelude, Integra, you name it, they all had it. But I couldn't afford it, so my mom gave me a 87 A86. And the plans were, I didn't really have much of a plan actually. I thought about doing like an engine swap or something like that, but my ultimate plan was just to get rid of that car and try to get in on a Honda. The first car I ever tuned was my own car, 71 240Z, Mikuni carbs. I had no idea what I was doing. It was my first carburetor I've ever touched, and having 3 of them, it was very overwhelming, very intimidating, but I was able to network with really good friends, as well as good mentors to help me guide me through with the tuning process. So the best carburetor in my own opinion is probably Mikuni carburetors or Mikuni Solex carburetors. They're very straightforward to tune. They're very stable. They're high quality, made very well, and they're very long lasting, and they have a linear power band. So everybody have a different way of rebuilding the carburetors, but my full rebuild process starts off with an inspection. So I do an overall inspection once the carburetor arrives to my shop, and I then start disassembling the carburetors, and I do a full assessment on it part by part. And from there it goes into a cleaning process and vapor blasting process, as well as zinc plating process. I zinc plate all the hardware, and after that it gets cleaned up and start doing their assembly process by using genuine Mikuni or Weber parts. Estimated time depending on which type of carburetors you have. Some are pretty easy, they get done within a month or two. Some are very complicated by having a lot of parts that has to be refurbished or parts not being readily available. So when that happens, everything just happens. Everything depending on when the process, when the parts come in, or should I say, when I will be able to properly complete the carburetor restoration. So it could be anywhere from 4 months, 6 months, 8 months. I've had some carburetor that's been sitting here for almost a year because I don't have enough parts for it. There's always an authorized dealer for every parts. So Mikuni, there's a if you go online, there's authorized dealer like Upgrade Motoring, Performance Tuning, or even myself can get some. Webers, Pierce manifolds, have jets. There's a lot of authorized dealers online that you can do searches on. So if you're looking for Mikuni parts, just put Mikuni jets, and most likely it'll pop up on the Google search, and you can kind of buy it online from there. And if not, just let me know and I'll be more than happy to help you. There's many steps to tuning the carburetors. Everybody have different method or way of tuning it. But my way of tuning the carburetors is first things first, got to get the car idled. It has to hold idle. It's okay if it's rough, but it has to hold an idle. And from there, adjust the air fuel mixture or pilot screws, adjust that, try to get the best idle possible by adjusting pilot screw one at a time. And from there, synchronize and adjust idle, and after that it becomes a test and tune, or jet tuning is what I do. Tools that's required, for Mikuni carburetors, JIS screwdrivers, flathead screwdrivers, obviously synchronizer or synchrometer. There's several different types of synchrometers out there, but the most common ones are one that's made by Weber or SK. They're the best synchronizer to use, and I think that's about it. Well, and jets, you need parts, so you also have to have quite a bit of jets. So the hardest thing to understand when I was tuning carburetors is probably learning the each functionality of each jets. So especially with Mikuni or Weber side draft carburetors, they're jet driven and they're not needle driven. So they have multiple stages of jets, which means like there's idle circuit, there's also a pilot circuit, and there's also a main circuit and acceleration circuit. So learning each circuit to know what each circuit does and where it starts to work and where the transition point is, I think that was probably the most difficult. I think every carburetors are pretty difficult to work on, especially if it's my first time working on it. But I think the most recent complicated carburetor that I worked on was a Solex Italy carburetors from a Mercedes-Benz 190. There's lots of parts, lots of obsolete parts. So try to find good used parts that I can replace it with, because the carburetors that I received was pretty messed up. Was probably the most challenging one. All the rest, you know, I've been working on it for quite some time, so they're pretty repetitive. I think the reason why there's not many carburetor tuners out there is because, number one, the carburetors are kind of a dying art. It's pretty much obsolete parts. Most people, you know, are going with the fuel injection. You know, I wouldn't say it's a lot easier to tune fuel injection, because tuning a car is always a difficult thing and it's always an art. So they have their own, you know, difficulties as well. But the reason why they're not really getting into carburetors is because, number one, people can't find them. And number two, you know, majority of the tuners nowadays have never seen carburetors before. So, you know, they go for something that they're used to working on, which is a fuel injection ECU tuning. There are quite a bit of carburetor tuners out there, but you know, it's not as nearly as many as the modern ECU tuners. The reason for that is because, like I said, they're obsolete, and you know, it's a dying art. A lot of experienced tuner, either they retired or they unfortunately have already deceased. And you know, they never really carried that art or, you know, the tuning method onto the next generation. So I have 4 cars. My daily driver is a 05 GX 470 Lexus. You know, I mainly got that because I kind of wanted to go off-roading with my family. I also have a 91 Honda Civic. I've always wanted a Civic. But I could never afford one back in the days. So when my friend was selling his really good condition Civic Si, I just had to pull the trigger and pick one up. So that's my second car. I also have a 1967 Datsun 520. It's a truck. Purchased it from a gentleman in Moreno Valley. He was trying to get rid of it. It was just way too good of a truck to pass up on it, so I just had to pick one up. And my ultimate, which is a 1971 Datsun 240Z. I bought it from a buddy of mine, John Williams. It was his former SCCA race car, and he blew a differential on the car, and he kind of stopped racing, and he had it parked in his shop for about 15-20 years, something like that. And one day I went to his shop, and corner of my eyes, I glanced at it. It was a 240Z, and at that time I had just sold my first 240Z, and I kind of regret selling it. So I begged John to sell me the car, and at first he wasn't really going to sell it to me, but then he finally gave in and handed me the keys to the car and sold it to me. So that's kind of like my ultimate hobby car, I guess. As a Datsun enthusiast or classic car enthusiast, and being, you know, the Z guy, I think my ultimate dream car will be a Fairlady 432R. They're probably the holy grail of Z cars, and they're extremely expensive, extremely rare. Most likely I won't be able to get one, but if I ever had an opportunity and finances to make it work, then I would love to pick that up. So the future goals for Kyusha House, I would love to expand my business to make it into a much larger you know, venue, but at the same time I'd love to keep improving on everything. So, you know, even with the carburetor restoration process right now, I like to try to be the best that I can be. And you know, if I find a new method or new process in restoration where I can improve it that much more, I would love to keep improving on it and not just, hover at where I am today. But I also would love to try to get in on the vintage racing scene. Not so much on like getting my own team and race my own cars, but more has to do with like a track support, or do like a carburetor restoration support for those people who already own a vintage race car that could use my service. So if there's an opportunity for that, I would love to jump in on it. I'd like to give a shout out to my buddy John Williams for always supporting me and helping me throughout this journey of getting my own space and all that stuff. If it wasn't for you sharing your space with me, I won't be here today, so thanks so much. Also my buddy Albert, for constantly helping me with a lot of projects. He comes in on his time off just to kind of extend his support to help me out with carburetor restoration process or working on car suspensions, things of that nature. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for supporting me and Kyusha House from the day one. Without you guys, I would not be here today. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I also would like to thank my family, my wife especially. I quit a really good paying job just to do what I do today. And she was there with me from the day I kind of gave that idea out to her, and she was very supportive. She never once said no to it. She said, if that's what I like to do, then go for it. So, I don't think I'll be here today if it wasn't for her. So I'm very thankful for her and the fans, obviously.